I'm Andrea Grover. I'm the director of Guildhall. Welcome to Stirring the Pot with Florence Fabricant. I want to first thank our sponsors, Chuffaut Cabinetry, and the owners, Gary and Marianne Chuffaut, for building this wonderful set. Also Cadillac for the display outside and for giving away cutting boards. Cinderella, the owner, Yusi Guerrera, for donating the food for our receptions. Dutch Petals for the beautiful flowers. Sparkling Point Vineyard, our local North Fork vineyard, for their award-winning sparkling wine for the receptions. And Vista Blue Singer Island, Florida, the luxury oceanfront residence, which we have information on about this incredible property, which you can pick up as you leave. And also our friends at Beach Magazine for being our media sponsor. Thank you so much. So as you know, this is kicking off Stirring the Pot, and there'll be 3 more coming up. We have Andrew Zimmern, Michael Simon, and Daniel Hum. I also want to let you know that our annual gala, which is our largest benefit and fundraiser of the year, is next Friday, August 11th. So please join us there if you can for cocktails or dinner or dancing. So let me tell you a little bit about our host, Florence Fabricant. She is the food and wine writer for the New York Times, as well as a member of our board of trustees. She lives in East Hampton in New York City. She started her writing career in 1972 at the East Hampton Star. She's the author of 12 cookbooks, and she holds the L'Ordre National du Mérite from the French government and is a member of the Who's Who of Food and Beverage in America. We're very lucky to have her as our host. Jacques Pepin is an internationally recognized chef, television personality, and author of many best-selling cookbooks, and I'm sure you all have them. His TV shows include The Complete Pépin, Jacques Pepin, Fast Food My Way, and Jacques Pepin, Heart and Soul. He's the co-founder of the American Institute of Wine and Food and has won an Emmy Award with Julia Child and 2 of the French government's highest honors, France's ultimate civilian recognition, Légion d'honneur, and an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters from Columbia University. He currently serves as the Dean of Special Programs at the International Culinary Center. We're so fortunate to have him here today. Please welcome Florence Fabricant and Jacques Pepin.
You go to Vienna. Thank you, everybody. I'm so thrilled that we have such a great audience today. And it's a gorgeous day, and I am delighted to be able to have a conversation with my old friend Jacques Pepin, who has had a most amazing career. He'll tell you more about that. He is a man of great generosity, graciousness, incredible food sense, and always has had those characteristics. He's smart as a whip and one of the wittiest people you'll meet. So let's have some applause for Jacques.
That's water.
That's just water. Would you like? See?
Can't drink water, I'm driving.
So Jacques, why don't we begin at the beginning? You started in the cooking field at what, 13 in France?
Yes, 1949. No one here was born in 1949. Yes, and I left home, and home was a restaurant where my mother was the chef. So from age 6, 7, during the war, I was in a kitchen working in one way or the other. And at 13, I left to go into form an apprenticeship. And then I worked in Paris and in Lyon, and eventually I came to America at the end of 1959.
When you were in Paris, you cooked for Charles de Gaulle?
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, someone introduced me a few weeks ago, said that man cooked for 3 French presidents. The 3 of them are dead. So, he's dead. Yeah, it was another world, and really another world. I mean, certainly the cook at that time was very, very low on the social scale. Any good mother would have wanted her child to marry a doctor, a lawyer, an architect, certainly not a cook. Now we are genius. I don't know what happened. In any case, yes, at that point, I remember I served like Eisenhower, Nehru, Tito, Macmillan. Those were the head of state at the time. Never once would you be asked to go to the dining room for kudo. Certainly, if anyone came to the kitchen, it was to yell at you something went wrong. So it was really quite different, another world. And that's why when I came to this country, 1964, I was offered a job at the White House for Kennedy. To tell you the truth, I did not realize the potential and the White House because I knew I had done that and it was no big deal, so I went to work for Howard Johnson.
A different kind of ruler.
Different time, yes.
But that part of your career was sort of in tandem with Pierre Franey, who is a familiar name in this part of the world.
Yeah, when I came here at the end of 1959, the day after I was here, I came to the pavilion, and Pierre was the chef there, and he hired me on the spot. I started the day after. I came with my certificate from De Gaulle, the Plaza Athénée in Paris, and no one looked at that here, and he said, call me Pierre. I said, Pierre, wow, the chef. So it was a different type of democracy, the way that's one of the reasons that I stay in America. It was another world. So yes, I worked with Pierre for 13 years actually at the pavilion, and after he became vice president of Howard D. Johnson, who created the company, hired Pierre, and Pierre asked me to go with him. So I stayed from 1960 to 1970, 10 years with Pierre, and I worked with him before and even after. So yes, Pierre was very, very important in my life. And in fact, through Pierre, I knew Craig Claiborne. Well, when he started at the New York Times, within a few months, I came here in 1959. In 1960, I knew the trinity of cooking, Julia Child, James Beard, and Craig Claiborne. So the food world was very, very small at that point. So I started coming here at the spring, Craig had a house, and I used to spend my weekend there before I was married. And eventually, Craig Claiborne did my wedding. We did the wedding in his house here. All the chefs were cooking. I was cooking about half an hour before I got married. Pierre Franey, René Verdon from the White House, Jean Verne, Roger Fesseguet, and I were all cooking, and that was 51 years next month, so at the spring here. A long time. Yes, it was another world.
Yeah.
Craig and you have to say that out of Julia Child, James Beard, Craig Claiborne, Craig was probably the most influential in my life, the most important for me. He started the life, so he was important in my career, in my life.
He was important in the careers of many chefs, and I think never quite got the recognition on a nationwide or worldwide basis that he deserved.
Absolutely, you're right.
But he was an important figure here. So then after Howard Johnson, what happened?
Well, I left Howard Johnson in 1970 to open a restaurant on Fifth Avenue called La Potagerie. And it was between 45 46th Street, mass production. It was something totally different. And I have to say, I opened the World Trade Center with Joe Baum in 1973, something like 4. Set up the commissary, and I was a consultant at the Russian Tea Room in the 80s and so forth. I'm saying that none of those jobs I would have been able to do it if I hadn't had the training of Howard Johnson. It was another world for me in terms of production, marketing, chemistry of food, many, many things that other French chefs I had no knowledge of. So Howard Johnson was very important in my life this year.
And in the meantime, you got a college degree at Columbia while you were at it?
Yes, well, that's probably another reason why I stayed in America. I came on a student boat. There was 1,200 students coming back from Europe. We saw like 2 Aurora Borealis. We finished in Canada, and then I took the train to New York with my suitcase. I get to Grand Central. That's how I came to America. And then on the ship coming in, there was a guy who spoke French, a professor somewhere. I said, I want to learn English properly. I want to go back to school. I had left school when I was 13. He said, the best school in New York is Columbia. I never heard of it. And within 2 weeks after I was here, I took the subway I ended up at Columbia, and somehow I managed to enroll English for foreign students, which I did for a couple of years. Eventually, I went into a validation program because I never went to high school. And eventually, I did a BA and an MA. And, last month, I got a PhD from Columbia. Yes, I would never have been able to do that in France, I think. So it was really another world, that I met here, and I've been very lucky. Yeah.
Well, La Potagerie was a restaurant of a kind of format that you see popping up all over now.
Yes.
It was maybe before its time.
Yes, it was another world. Actually, at Howard Johnson, we started doing 2 or 3 restaurants, like that theme restaurant that I designed with Pierre and all that. But when Mr. Johnson died, Howard Johnson Jr. too didn't follow up on that, and then the company was sold to the British, and then to Marriott, and to one thing or another. So the whole thing changed a great deal. There is still a few Howard Johnson, but the original was Howard Johnson ''S. That was the original restaurant. I think there is one left. There was one in Danbury, Connecticut, and there is one somewhere. But
The Orange Roof.
I did in 2000. Life magazine asked me, Time magazine asked me to do a piece. They did the 100 most important people of the 20th century, from John Ford to Bill Gates to Picasso, Braque, and so forth. They did a piece on Ray Kroc, who created McDonald's. And I had met him several times with Mr. Johnson. They asked me to do the piece on him, which I did. I realized that in the mid-'60s, when I was at Howard Johnson, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Burger King, and were bigger. I mean, Howard Johnson was twice as big as all those companies together. It was a big company. We had over 1,000 restaurants, 200 bottles. It was quite large,
Yeah.
Yes.
And then after La Potagerie?
After La Potagerie, then I opened, as I said, the World Trade Center, and I started giving classes all over the country. In the 70s, it was the time, after women liberation, the end of the 60s, organic gardening, health food store, the whole thing changed, and many, many small cookware shop with cooking school open in the back. And I started doing this. It was a time where the man kind of invaded the space of the woman. That is, men started to cook, at home. But conversely, women start moving into the professional world of cooking. And now I still teach at Boston University and at the school in New York, ICC. And the last time I was at BU, I had 15 people in my class there. It was 15 women. It's totally, that has changed a great deal this way. I also, in 1974, had a very bad accident, and I had 12 fractures, broke my back, 2 hips, leg, arm, so I couldn't really go back behind the stove in the kitchen as I had done. So I moved in that direction of teaching and starting writing about food and that type of thing.
This, I think, was your first cookbook? This is a...
Yes.
Yeah,
I did a book with Helen McCulley before called The Other Half of the Egg, but that was the first one.
Jacques Pepin, French Chef Cooks at Home. This is a reprint that came out later. The original was in 1975, and you can see how stained it is. This is one of my cooking Bibles. I bought the book when it first came out, and I still use those recipes. There is something about how sensible everything in this book is, and how easy
very
it is.
Cartesian, French.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book, and I recommend it. And then the book that is coming out very soon is called A Grandfather's Legacy in the Kitchen with Shorey. and it's Jacques cooking with his 13-year-old granddaughter. And I have to say, for people who are not experienced cooks, forgetting the fact that he's cooking with a 13-year-old, he could be cooking with a 30-year-old or a 50-year-old or whatever, because, again, the sensibility and the reasonable quality of these recipes without being hugely complicated, pretentious, or any of that.
Show you some money there. No, I'm going to give you $100. Wow, the book is coming out next month.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. I mean, and it starts with how to set a table and table manners. And what cookbooks do that anymore?
Yes. Yeah, she's correcting me. Don't speak with your mouth full. Don't put your elbow on the table. Don't interrupt when, what? Maybe
yeah,
the
I mean, in
millennium.
my house, we decant the orange juice out of the cardboard container or the bottle, and it's the same with milk. You don't put that stuff right on the table. Right. But
and we did the 36th show. Where is Tom? Tom, my friend here, is my. It's been 35 years I've been shooting my cookbook. He lives in Madison, in Connecticut, where I live as well. And he just did 36 10-minute, 12-minute show that we did with Shari, part of those that you can look at when...
yeah, this will be out in about a month.
Yeah,
so
I think so.
Look for it. Yeah. So, Jacques, in your view, your long view, how has cooking evolved and changed today from, say, either when you started or when you first came to the U.S.? And give us...
The U.S., it's a different world. I mean, I came here and I live on 50th and 1st Avenue, between 1st and 2nd Avenue, on top of a restaurant called La Toque Blanche. The guy who sponsored me actually to came here. And I remember going to the supermarket on 1st Avenue. It was my first supermarket. I said, well, that's a great idea. In France, I used to go to the boulanger for bread, to the pastry shop for that, to the fish shop for that. Time consuming there. I said, everything under the same roof. This is a terrific idea, except everyone was packaged. There was only one salad, it was iceberg. I asked, where are the mushrooms? Aisle 5, that was canned mushroom. So it was supermarket, but it was another world. None of the oil, vinegar. And now, I mean, I'm an optimist. The supermarket have never been as beautiful as they are in this country. And a great deal now of local as well as organic food and all that. So it's just another world altogether. That when Craig started at the New York Times also, 1959, 8, something like that, yeah. And at that time, it was not even considered very prestigious to write about food. They gave it to whoever wanted to write about it. And he made it quite respectable, kind of, in a sense, invented the vocabulary of food criticism in this country and so forth, and became very, very influential in that way.
He also made a big part of his career recognizing chefs, particularly up-and-coming chefs.
Not only that, but from Madhu Jaffrey, it's going to be from Indian to Marcella Hazen, to all of those different type of cuisine. He brought them in, and Grace Shoe, I cook with Grace Shoe at his house, and so forth.
Zarella,
yes, and yes, amazing. Craig was very good this way, yes.
What about chefs today and the restaurant business today compared to when you started?
Well, we were stuck behind the stove without any question. The chef never transcended the kitchen, went to the dining room. Now, a great deal of chefs are businessmen now, and they have different restaurants. They involve into all kind of other marginal things to the cooking itself. So it's quite a different type of world, and certainly a great deal of pressure on the chef. The point is also, when I work at the Plaza Athénée in Paris, for example, in the mid-50s, one famous dish there was the lobster soufflé. Well, the lobster soufflé, we were 50 chefs in the kitchen, right? Behind the stove, we were about 350 employees. I bet you that the 50 chefs there could have done the lobster soufflé, you would never have known which has done it. So the idea was to conform. You work somewhere, you conform. At the Plaza Ateneo or at Maxim, you know, you had a tomato, you cut it this way. I would never have thought to put it on the other side, cut it the other way. So there was no really munch and put. You go there, you learn, and whatever you learn there, this is the way you do it. So the idea was to conform. Still, when I came to the pavilion in New York, I can sit down and you can give me the striped bass of the pavilion, certain dish like that. I would say that's the striped bass of the pavilion, that you recognize those dishes. So in a sense, it was less pressure on the chef. Now the chef wants to say, I'm creating that, I'm inventing all the time, creation. So there is that relentless pressure on the chef to create, to do something new. And you end up with a slice of Roquefort on top of a bowl of raspberry ice cream. Wow! No one has ever thought of it. Probably a reason why no one has thought of it. So, yeah, it's a different world for the chef. But very exciting. As I said, the chef now, I mean, we're still soup merchant, in my view. But mashed potato maker, that's what we are, right? So, but still the chef now, the recognized chef, And he started in France also with Bocuse during Nouvelle Cuisine in the 70s and all that. And many of those chefs came. Well, I remember cooking with Bocuse at Craig several times and so forth. What a great time.
Yeah, well, there was a whole generation.
Yeah, and thank you to school like the CIA, Culinary Institute of America, Johnson & Well, the French Culinary Institute in New York. When I came to this country, when I was going to work for Howard Johnson, at the Pavilion, it was only French chef and all that. At the Pavilion, when I worked to Howard Johnson, Mr. Johnson says, Jacques wants to work for us, he's got to work in one of our restaurants. So I ended up in Rego Park, at the Howard Johnson on Rego Park, which was the largest one that they had there in Queens, and for 3 months, whatever. It was all black kid, African American there, all working. They never heard of Le Pavillon anyway, barely knew who De Gaulle was. So, like in any kitchen, you have to pull your own weight. So I start flipping burger and doing it in a few weeks faster or better than anyone, as a professional. My point is that I did not know one white American chef in New York. All the chefs that I knew in New York, from all the great restaurants who were French or Italian, Swiss, a lot of Swiss, German, you name it, until the CIA started coming in and it became kind of respectable than the others. And now we have extraordinary chefs in this country, but it's relatively new.
Yeah. And most of them don't start at 13.
That's true. They go to college first and all that, which is good, in another way to have education. I did it in reverse, but...
What about the food, though? This creativity and the quality of the food, the preparations, the way, what the consumer seems to appreciate today.
Well, I tell you, I go to restaurant now, I go to Brooklyn or go to certain place in New York, I think that I don't know anything about cooking. Wow. I mean, people, it's extraordinary. There is 24,000 restaurants in New York, and the amount of ethnicity that we have in New York, and as well as any place in America for that matter, is kind of unique in the world. I don't think, it's probably the most exciting cooking, in my opinion now, is right here in America, what's going on. There is no place like that in the world. And the point is that as a Frenchman, originally, in France, people will eat French. It's kind of part of your DNA, practically. It's part of your tradition, and there is no reason really to change. Of course, there is Chinese restaurant or the type of restaurant, but 98% of people eat French. Well, you go to Italy, maybe 99%, as well as in Spain or Portugal, people eat that the way it is. It never was that way in America because of the ethnicity. So one day people are going to eat Chinese, and one day they're going to eat Turkish or French or whatever. So this is unique in the world in that sense. And there is a paradox here, because for most Europeans, they still look at America as where you eat about 5 dishes: hot dog, hamburger, fried chicken, pizza, and canned macaroni or whatever. So this is, of course, wrong, but in some way it's right too. Because if you go in the mall, those big mall places, and you have those fast food dinner. Yes, the people are there every day and eat 5, 6 dishes over and over again. But on the other hand, in urban center like New York, the ethnicity is such amazing. So there is really a dichotomy there, into those type of cuisine, which did not probably existed 50 years ago.
Probably not, yeah. What about consumers today, the insistence?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have to start from the beginning?
We have to start over.
Oh gosh. Hi, I'm Jacques Pepin.
The insistence that people want for their particular tastes when they go into a restaurant, the supposedly healthy way to eat, the gluten-free, the allergies, all of those kinds of things.
It is an amazing thing because I don't think that I knew the word allergy when I came to this country. And even the people in this country, when I was a kid, no one was allergic to anything. So without any question, it has to do with whatever we've been eating in the last half a century and all that, to have those type of reaction to different ingredients. But it has been my experience that we worked out in certain restaurants that I worked out to do a menu, and people like to know the amount of calories, the amount of salt, the amount of whatever protein and so forth in it, and they usually order something else. They're happy that it's there, but no one orders from that menu, or not many people. So, again, but you have the choice. You have this. And certainly we are not at the point we were. I remember 20 years ago, 25 years ago, teaching, as I say, I was teaching at that time all over the country. And according to the health guru of the time, you had to use 1 egg a week. One egg is, in fact, just about the best kind of protein that you can get. People gorge themselves on margarine, but you couldn't use any butter to. Now people drink olive oil. It's better for you. So, people go from one thing to the other this way. And but frankly, you look at whether you go to Portugal or Italy or people who have been eating the same thing forever, in moderation and following the season, fresh food, organic is good. Moderation is important, but what's more important is probably moderation in moderation. People get berserk.
And less processed food.
Huh?
Less processed food.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, without any question. For me, it has always been try to avoid processed food. If you cannot recognize what's first, when you read what's in it and you open the box, you cannot recognize it. And now it's horrible. I have been in family where the little kid not only eat that type of processed food, but recognized by the color of the box. I want the blue box or the green box. What's in there? No one knows. I mean, you look at that's no good. No.
Yeah.
I mean, when Claudine, my daughter, who was turning 50s, was a little kid, we had a house upstate New York at that point. I gave classes for the kid in her class who were like 5, 6, 7 years old. Take them to the garden, make them identify the different herbs and stuff, the salad. I have given so many classes in area where the kid, or in school, used to do where, for many kids, a chicken is rectangular, it's got plastic on top, it certainly doesn't have any head or feet, so that's what so, we get so far away from the food, and people get berserk. I mean, I am not going to kill a rabbit on television because I probably would be assassinated. But already killing a lobster, people, you get like 50 later and all that. We got to get closer to what nature is, human nature. I mean, it's, yes, and it's very important for the kid. This is what I did with my granddaughter, taking a wild mushroom, taking her to pick up fish, taking her to the garden, getting stuff, getting fresh eggs with a lady who has chicken there. That's important. And those memories stay with you the rest of your life. Those have become very, very visceral, the memory of those days that you had as a child, it stay with you the rest of your life. So it's very important, and I remember people coming to our house and eating, I say, everyone eat the same thing. So I do a roast of veal and some artichoke But the kids say, you're going to give that to the kid? Yes. Maybe they eat before us, they make too much sauce, but we're going to eat the same thing. People go and eat pizza to the kid or hot dog, and then they all sit down for that leg of lamb or whatever that they're eating. And when the kid gets 12 years old or 11 and it's his bar mitzvah or first communion, it's okay, now you sit at the table, you eat like us. You say, don't eating that stuff. You know, I never had it in my life. So yes, you have to start young. I don't remember ever buying even baby food for Claudine. I didn't put the salt too much in it at the beginning, and whatever we ate, I put it at the time. We just get the blender came in, so I would blend it, and we do stuff, and so she get the taste of, you know, pasta and garlic or whatever we did. She get at it that taste, maybe with a bit less salt or seasoning for the kid, but those tastes are important to expose the kid to that.
I believe that.
Yeah.
And you'll see an element of that in this book. There's another side to your career, though, that fewer people may be aware of, and that's your painting and your art.
Yes, that's kind of satisfied me in a different ways. Yes, I've been painting for 40, 50 years. When we first came here, in fact, when I went to Colombia, one time I took a class in sculpture and drawing. And then after that, before I was married, and I've been married 51 years, we rented a house in Woodstock, New York, and then we went on to ski in Hunter Mountain during the winter. But there I had a friend of mine, we started getting the apartment we had in New York. I like to kind of refinish furniture, so we find furniture from not only the Salvation Army, but even in the street. We redid furniture, cleaned up, doing all that type of, and we started painting and drawing and sculpting in Hunter, and I get the bug, and I always painted, and I've done a fair amount of show. I even have a website with my artwork, you know. So, as Claudine take care of it, and Tom here with somewhere.
But you've been painting on dinnerware and kitchenware and towels and aprons and.
Now I have a whole line with Sur la Table. They asked me a few years ago, could I do a lot of chicken? They would like your chicken. I came there to Seattle, which was to do a book signing, and they all had an apron with one of my chicken on top. I said, so they say, it's really nice. Do you want to do more? I say, yes. So I sent them all kind of drawing, and they did mug, all kind of thing was done in Italy, in France, and so forth. So they have a whole line of my product now. So it's pretty exciting with it, a new type of work. Well, this here, I painted a couple of months ago, for, what is the organization again here? I forget.
Oh, the retreat?
Yes, that's for fundraising for some type of thing like that. And that's the first time that I see that, because when I painted on it, the paint, when you do, are very matte, you know, they have no, and after they fire it, and it gets very bright in color. So that looks good.
Yeah, yeah. It almost looks like a grande aioli.
Yes, yeah, right. Yes, it's true. You know what I do too, which I have a book of that, which I don't know where it is, but which is coming out in a couple of months, a book of menus. And I started that when I came at Craig Claiborne in the early 60s. When we cooked at Craig was writing the menu. He said, well, let's get a book, write the menu. So I wrote the menu. Then I did a little drawing around of the sea or whatever. Then Ed Joby, with a friend of mine, with a great cook, he has several cookbooks, with a great friend of Craig, but he's a professional painter. He started doing more elaborated drawing in this. So we have those books of Craig with those menus were on, in fact, in the New York Times, in the International New York Times cookbook, I think it is. I have my wedding of September 1966. There, it was in that book. So after I was married, I started doing those, and now I have 12 books that thick of over 50 years of when people come to our house, not each time, but we write the menu, people sign, say funny things. So I can, the other day, someone was at the house, I said, you want to know what Claudine had for her 3rd birthday? So I could look in it, and she's turning 50, as I said. Her third birthday, I could see what she signed with her friend, the little drawing. I can see my mother there, my two brothers, who died, many other friends, Craig as well, in those books, signing. So it's a great way to put your memory down, and for me, it's my whole life in those 12 big cookbook of menus, so it's fun.
So if you were to cook dinner tonight, let's say just for your family,
I may.
and could cook anything, let's assume the ingredients are available, what would the menu be?
It would have to do with me going to the market first, looking what looked good. I mean, I go to the market and I say, I think I'm going to do duck tonight. And I came back with half a salmon or whatever because they're selling it on sale, good quality or whatever. So yeah, the market, like now, I went to next door to me yesterday. I got some fresh peas in a farm that I go to. I didn't intend to do fresh peas, but I had that. I had Arctic char. They had beautiful tomato too. I did a tomato thing, and with the Arctic char, we had those peas. What else did we have? And I had before, we had a salad of tomato. I had so much basil in the garden. I did a kind of puree of pesto to put on the tomato salad. So the cooking for me had a great deal to do with going to the market, with looking at the food, with the feel. I don't really have any favorite, depending whether I have a hangover, whether I'm in a good mood or not, whether it's winter, summer, I want a soup, not a soup. This changes all the time, yes, without any question. I cook probably sampler and sampler and sampler as it goes. When you're a young chef, you kind of tend to add to the plate, to add more of this, and, with the little bottle, you do punctuation cooking, that, comma, So, anyway, and as you get older and older, metabolism change, you kind of take away from the plate to be left just with a tomato at the right temperature, like great olive oil, bit of salt, and without too much embellishment around. I think it's a normal process. Don't you think so?
Yeah. We're going to take questions in a moment, but I have one more question for you, and it's an interesting question that I heard posed to former Vice President Joe Biden on a radio on NPR not long ago, and I'm going to ask you this question. Joe Biden, who was 73, was asked if he didn't know his chronological age, how old would he think he is? I'm going to ask you that. If you didn't know your actual age, how old do you think you are?
I'm old enough that I actually have no memory, so I don't remember. I don't know. I don't feel that much different than when I was in my 60s, just in the early 70s, except when I had to do the garden, like yesterday, and pull out stuff or carry stuff, then yes, my body. But yesterday I went to walk at the beach with my dog. I mean, I still have a brace on my leg to all the fracture that I had in accident. No, I played bull yesterday, pétanque, we play. I'm lucky, I guess. So, yeah, I'm still 18, 20.
Yeah.
Not quite. Not quite.
Biden said he would say he's 43.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
We have now got some time for questions, and I think there are people with microphones. So, how about this lady right in front?
Hi. What is your favorite restaurant in New York City?
My two favorite restaurants, this is a leading question. I don't really. It changes all the time, and I go to a restaurant, get all excited about it, and forget, go to another one. I am not a good person to ask because first I'm a glutton, and secondly, the most expensive the restaurant, probably if I go to it at Percy or Daniel, I probably won't pay. They will do so. It is not fair for people, to try to compare that type of restaurant. But, I would paraphrase James Beard here, who said, what is the best restaurant in town? He said, that's where they know you, The first restaurant is where they know you. Probably.
There's a non-answer for you. Very diplomatic. This gentleman here.
I guess you were never lucky enough to work in a Greek diner. We should never try to stop, get better, improve ourselves. But at which point did you get where you suddenly say, I'm good? Was it when you were cooking for de Gaulle, Kennedy? When did that happen?
I don't think it happened. As I said, now I go to restaurants and I feel that I don't know anything about cooking. I was talking to André Saltner about that not long ago. André Saltner is a great, great chef. He was the owner of Lutèce 35 years and considered the greatest French restaurant in New York, probably in the 70s and too. And we talked about that, the way it changed and new idea. This is the beauty of cooking, really. I mean, I'm sure I could cook with you or anyone here and I would learn something. I say I would never have looked at it this way. Maybe I learned what not to do, but I would learn something. If you keep your mind open, and you can probably do recipe, maybe 10, 15, 20,000 recipe for one chicken. If it's South Africa, from Chinese to Russian to whatever it is. So there is always something new that you learn and you look at. For me, having those menu book is interesting because I looked at a recipe that I did 50 years ago and I probably wouldn't do it now. Certainly I wouldn't do it the same way. And it's different with my panning. I look at panning that I did 50 years ago and I say I would never pan that this way. I don't even understand how to look at it this way. And I would love to be able to taste food that I did as an apprentice or whatever. It probably would be amazing to me, but of course, food is something which is very evanescent. You eat it, it disappeared, but you have the taste memory left. But what was your question?
You were never lucky enough to work in a Greek diner.
No, it's true. I mean, food for me, and a great deal of the food, not only the food, it's the way it's given to you. I don't think that there is many people more generous than chef in general. You cannot cook really indifferently. I mean, you have to put some love into it, and maybe the process of cooking, maybe the purest expression of what love is, because you always cook for someone else, for your mother, your kid, your friend, whoever it may be. I mean, my wife can do a whole dinner by herself, put the light on, sit down and eat. Yeah, she could do that. I couldn't do that. I always like to cook for someone, yes. Yes,
okay,
sir.
there's over on the side there.
Yeah. You can stand up, and if we can, you have a better hearing than mine, so you can repeat the question.
Well,
I'm a big fan of the Obama family, and I miss them more than ever now. But I was hoping you could tell us what it's like to cook with Michelle Obama and visit the White House.
Yeah, I did cook with Michelle Obama. I went to the White House a few years ago, and I cooked for President Obama too during the re-election campaign. I did a dinner, we did with André Saltner actually at Alain Sayac at the St. Regis in New York. Then after I went to the White House with my granddaughter and Claudine, and I cook out of the organic garden with her. They're absolutely charming people too. And I was interested. She came, she said, "Hi, Jacques." I'm sure, people tell them the name. She gave me a hug. Hi, Claudine. She gave me a hug. And Shari, my granddaughter, was like 7, 6, whatever. She shook her hand. She didn't touch her. Wow, I thought it was surprising. Then after that, they said we could take a picture with the president. So we went to the Oak Room or whatever it was, the whole family. So I was there with the 2 daughters and Claudine and my granddaughter and Mr. and Mrs. Obama. And Bo, the dog, who loved me, smelled dog on me, so he came. For a dog, he doesn't know you're not the president, doesn't make any difference. That's the beauty of dog. In any case, I have a little story on that. We were several other people, Yamakushi and all that, doing that day. And we all left. And the lady who was in charge, it was a captain of the security, she was a bit older maybe than the other people, so she knew my show and Cooking with Julia, so she loved me. We talked together and all that, and we all left. And we came to the door closed. I said, what happened? I said, I don't know. So she called and she said, well, we are looking for someone in the White House. I said, well, it's pretty exciting. Looking for someone in the other. They said, well, it's going to happen again. So 5 minutes gone, they didn't reopen the door. And then they came and asked all of us, did any one of you was in the hospital last week and had an operation and all that? None of us had it. They said no. So they came back and said, did any one of you have a test done last week in the hospital a few days? I did. I had a stress test done, I think, on that Thursday, and that was on Monday. That was like 4 days later. And my doctor told me, don't kiss a pregnant woman for the next 30 minutes. I said, I promise. So when I had that test, whatever they inject to you. In any case, that was 4 days later, and I was the one who closed the door, and they had been following me since the morning through the thing. They have really serious equipment at the White House, I tell you. So this is like my claim to fame. I closed the door at the White House.
There's a gentleman there.
Yes.
Oh, no, it's another lady.
Could you say something about the work he did with Julia Childs or your relationship with her?
Well, you know, as I said, I met Julia in 1960 at the house of Helen Macaulay, that some of you may remember. She was the food editor of McCall House Beautiful, and she kind of became my surrogate mother. She was never married. She was a very feisty lady, and we became very, very friends. And she, the one who introduced me, she spoke with James Beard every day for a couple of hours on the telephone. She introduced me. No, Craig, I knew from Pierre. And one day she told me, do you want to look at that book? So I look at that book, a manuscript of a book. I said, you know, that's pretty good. She said, well, it's a woman who wrote that. She's from the West Coast. She's coming next week. Do you want to cook for her? I said, sure. She said, well, she's a big woman with a terrible voice. You know, so that was Julia. And I remember that we spoke French, actually, more. Her French was better than my English. I just came here, and she just came from France. At that time, she was really totally unknown because she'd never been like the food editor of a magazine, newspaper, television. She hadn't done yet. She hadn't written a book yet, so no one really knew her. So I knew her from the beginning. We became friends. And after that, I have been teaching at BU for 36 years now. So all of those years, I used to go to Boston, and I called Julia, and either I had breakfast with her or lunch, dinner, we went out together. So we started teaching together at BU, and we had great fun, you know. And then we did a special for PBS called Cooking in Concert, they asked us to do, which was prior to the Food Channel network, so it was in the 80s or whatever. And that kind of led us eventually to do a series together, you know. So it was fun. I mean, I have to say that I've done 13 series of 26 shows with KQED, the PBS station in San Francisco, for the last 32, 34 years. I did a couple of series which we had to do on time. That is a 30-minute show. It's about 29 minutes. So I had 3 or 4 dishes. So it's on time. So someone goes in front of you, 15 minutes, 12 minutes, 9 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute wrap up. So it can be pretty stressing. So when I did it with Claudine, after a couple of series, I did it with my daughter Claudine, and I said she can be kind of the vox populi, you know, ask me the question that people would want to ask. So I told them we can't really do it on time because I'm showing her how to roll a dough, and she's struggling there, and I see a sign coming 3 minutes. I push the kid up, grab the dough, and do it myself. So fine. So we did it 4 or 5 minutes. You know, over time and so forth, they had to edit. We did it with Julia. Julia said, we're going to cook, when it's finished, we'll tell you. Some show, I think the longest one was 110 minutes on a 30-minute show. So we drank wine, we talked, and we did show. In addition to that, the second thing that we didn't have there, we didn't have any recipe. We decided that we were going to stew or whatever, so we know more or less what we were doing, but we had no recipe. meaning that why did I put scallion in there? Well, because they happened to be there. You know, so in fact, when the series came out, it took 2 years for the series to come on the air because the people at Knopf Random House who were doing the book, they had to look at those shows ad nauseam, you know, to extrapolate the recipe and create the book. So it was a reversal of what you do usually on television. But yes, certainly we had a lot of great fun with Julia because, I mean, she was exactly on television the way she was, you know, at home or France. So it was, yeah, we argue a lot, but, and she ended up being much more French than I was in many recipes that we did. Remember doing spinach, whatever, she said, "You don't do it like that in France." I said, "Well, I'm from Connecticut." Anyway, so. Yes, sir.
We're all addicted to watching your cooking shows. Do you watch any cooking shows yourself?
No, not really. Frankly, when the Food Channel network started, I was looking, it was kind of new and so forth. But now there's so much kind of reality show. I don't really look at those. I was on a panel a few weeks ago, and a woman was a food historian. She said there is 405 cookery shows on television. Do you believe that? I don't know whether it's accurate or not, but maybe it's 350. But it's kind of crazy. I will still look sometime on Saturday if my wife says, "Oh, you're on." I look, and then if Lydia Bastianich is there, or Rick Bellis, or someone like that, or Ming Tsai, I still feel that on PBS at least we teach something. But I'm perfectly aware that people who look at me and say, "That guy is really boring," over and over again. Yes, I mean, you know, some people like this, some like other things, you know, so... But it's amazing the amount of show there is on television now. It's just flabbergasting, you know, so...
Yeah.
Do you look at many shows?
No.
No.
Some, yeah. But mainly because I don't have a lot of time.
Right.
Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions, but one is, I used to work in Provincetown in the summers in the 60s.
Uh-huh.
And I remember all my artist friends, we used to go to the Howard Johnson's because there was a French chef there doing dinners. Was that you?
No, I've been to Provincetown. In fact, I've been to the Howard Johnson because I used to visit the restaurant a lot, but I never worked on that one, no?
Okay, well, there's somebody doing these French.
Right.
The other question is, I just want to thank you because you're right. I only watch your cooking show because you actually teach something. You always teach something. And you always do something different. Like, there was one recipe, I don't know where you got this from, but you make anchovies and onions, and then you braised the eggplant, and you folded it in with escarole, and made a pasta.
Sounds good. Can you send me the recipe? I don't remember that one. You know, I have 30 books, that's 31 books, so that's a lot of recipes, and people will come to me. "I did your roast chicken." Wow, that's great. I don't know.
Which roast chicken?
I wouldn't have any idea where.
I think there's
Yes, man, there's a man back in yellow there. Okay.
Here comes the mic.
Out of all the people you've cooked for, have you received a most memorable compliment?
Yeah, that's a good question. People always ask you the type of question who you would want to cook for. Or often people would ask you, what is going to be your last meal? You know, that's a big question. I don't know what it would be, but I know it would be very, 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 very long. Yes. But cooking, frankly, the type of cooking that we did at Craig many years ago, or that I do in my family with my son-in-law teaching at Johnson & Whaley, the chef as well. And the week before last, we did a big bull party at my house. Cooking with friends like this, with stuff that we get from the garden. Everyone is cooking. Everyone is stealing the food of the other one. We are 4 or 5 chefs cooking, laughing, drinking a lot. That's probably the best kind of memory that I can think of cooking. Cooking for someone specifically, not really. You know, you don't really know whether people will like it or are just being polite or, You know, if I have people coming to my house, I try to find out whether so they like sweet bread or not. So I like, because I'm not going to try to do something that I don't like to eat, but I mean, cooking is to please people. So I would try to do something that you like to eat, but frankly, it goes back to friend and family. You know, that's the most rewarding type of cooking for me. Yeah.
Is there any food you don't like?
I'm not crazy about coconut or marshmallow, but otherwise, I love Oreo cookie and Jello. So, no, I'm basically pretty much a glutton. Yeah? So I go to a restaurant, and if the chef knows I'm there, they get crazy. I'm with my wife. My wife ordered that fish. My wife had one tablespoon. She said, I don't like it. The fish is up. So not only do I have to eat my fish, but I have to eat her fish, so the chef doesn't get mad whether it's good or not. So, yes, my wife is much more fussy than I am. Yeah.
We have time for maybe one or two more questions.
Yes, ma'am.
What are your favorite restaurants out here?
Out here? Oh, I live in Connecticut, so you know I don't really know the restaurant here, frankly. And you know, again, you know, best restaurant for me is home or where you go with a friend, or, you know. And sometimes a restaurant is good one night, it's not as good another night. Sometimes you're in the mood. You know, it has a great deal to do with the mood you're in, the type of restaurant that you go to. And the same way that I cook, you know, sometimes you're in a better mood. And it does, you know, that's the paradox of cooking. In order to do a dish who tastes exactly the same each time, you have to change it each time. Otherwise, there's no way it can taste the same. Chicken is never exactly the same amount of fat. You know, it's humid, it's not humid. You cook on gas, you cook on electric, you cook on cast iron or copper. You know, all kind of tiny change that it's almost subconscious the way you adjust to it. And this is the beauty of a great chef or a good restaurant where you go there and it's exactly the same each time when you order that dish. In order for that to be the same, it has to be changed each time minutely, but it has to be changed. You know? So.
Okay, one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
There's somebody in the back there.
All right.
Well, here's the last question. So one of the wonderful things in your book is you talk about your mother during the war, and she was very resourceful and making some, you know, dishes out of maybe what for us maybe wouldn't even be something that we would want to buy. Or so, could you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, certainly, you know, I was fashioned by the war also, and I'm very miserly in the kitchen, if you want. Because of that, the way I was trained. I mean, there is 12 restaurants I can count in my family, and it's owned by 12 women. You know, so my aunt, cousin, my mother, several restaurants, including even my wife in Connecticut at a restaurant many years ago. So that type of cooking is probably closer to me than the cooking of great restaurants that I've done. But yes, when we were a kid, what my mother could cook during the war was not that much. So I tell you, we never really left anything on our plate, and you kind of learn to cook in a different way. This way, something become very essential in food. So the cooking of my mother, still I remember those tastes very much. So you know, it's another world now, but still, I mean, I go back to, in time of stress, you go back to those tastes. I think it was a Chinese philosopher who said that patriotism is the taste of the dishes of your youth. I'm paraphrasing there. And there is a great deal of truth there, you know, in terms of stress and all that, you go back to those dishes too, and when you see those kids in Afghanistan or somewhere else, 20 years old, you know, what do they think about at night? They may think of the clam chowder of their mother or the fried chicken or whatever it may be. So at that point, the food transcends the level of the physiological function of food. It becomes something much more. It becomes home. It becomes security. It becomes love. You know, it becomes who you are. So yes, those tastes are very important. Yes.
Well, thank you very
Oh.
much, Jacques. Oh, you want one more question?
One more question
One more
for the lady.
question.
Okay.
One more question.
Okay.
Do you ever go home and feel like cooking nothing? And if so, what would you make for yourself?
Well, if I don't feel like cooking, you know, I will have, I don't know, a couple of eggs. Eggs for me is always what I like the best, you know. And yeah, I did some very simple recipe here with my granddaughter. And otherwise, I'll come home and my wife is cooking. And it's not like she tell me, "What do you think, darling?" She said, "Don't touch anything." That's what she said. Right. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you all.